They have unveiled the iPhone 17. Let's get to Steve Kovac for some of the features. Steve.
Hey there, Melissa. Yeah, this is the baseline model of the iPhone 17. I know you were just showing some images of it, and if you thought it looked exactly like last year's model, well, you're right, because it's basically the same design, a little bit larger screen. The screen resolution is a little bit smoother than last year, better camera, better battery life, all the things you've come to expect of these incremental updates year over year with the iPhone. We're still waiting for the big star of the show, that thin model I told you about, at the top of the hour. But for now, this is the base model of the iPhone 17. We'll get pricing and a release date probably towards the end of the presentation in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. But that's what we got right now as far as the iPhone 17. Still waiting for that Air or thin model that we've been calling the Air and the Pro model. So we'll be back once we get more details on those, Melissa.
All right, Steve, keep us posted. Gene, we'll go back to you. I mean, I guess this is exactly what we expected, but I'm just wondering how you think about that base model and the iPhone Air, which should be released at any moment at this point in terms of pricing. Will there be a price differential, a premium for a thinner phone that has less battery life and a camera that's not as good?
I mean, they're gonna put some sort of premium on the aesthetics, and my guess is the headline pricing is going to be $899 on that Air compared to the Pro at $999, and there'll be this debate about you pay an extra $100, you get a better battery, you get a better camera. That undoubtedly will come, but there is this question. Apple's trying to pull a string that they have been masterful at. Two strings actually. One is just related to tweaking the product lines to appeal to new people. Maybe this would be more on the aesthetic side. And second is just kind of working those edges and angles around pricing. And so I think it's going to come in, I'm going to round up, call it $900 versus $1,000 where the Pro. Just as a point of reference, is the two Pro models account for about half of total units, a little bit more than half of sales, but half of units. And then that compares to this where the Air is going to sit. That's typically 20% of units, is that kind of that third tier phone. That could bump it up. I think it will bump this up. The new form factor will bump it up to 25% plus. But that's really the substance of the lineup is going to be the Air and the two Pro models.
Don't want to make too much of intraday movements in reaction to real-time events, but the stock is backed off about 0.5%. I'm sure some people are just impatient to hear some of the good stuff. Gene, we heard earlier, that line from AT&T CEO John Stankey essentially saying he doesn't see anything earth-shaking in the new line. But what does the carrier competitive dynamics mean for the potential for the new iPhone line? I'm thinking here of this idea of a new competitive cycle breaking out among the wireless carriers because of these sales of spectrum, and whether that's going to be something that could be a volume tailwind.
I think the carriers, commentary from carriers are valuable in terms of trying to think about how these cycles are playing out. And I think going into an event like this, they know what's coming out, but it's pretty hard to really put too much weight into that. At the end of the day is that these carriers, just over half of their customers are iPhone customers. And it is extremely competitive for them to be relevant to their competition when it comes to pricing and subsidies. And so there is a dynamic. They don't have that same aggressive pricing subsidy environment on Samsung devices because there's just a whole spectrum of those devices versus iPhones. And so there is a piece to this too where you have to keep in mind is that the carriers, there's a piece of the Apple relationship that they don't particularly like. They are Apple's biggest customers are those carriers.
Right, but maybe they resent having to pay up and subsidize at times.